Hello and welcome to the Rangers Review Daily Brief. It's normally the morning brief, so I've just quickly changed it there. But unfortunately, we've had some issues with regards to Joshua Barry, who's on his way from Madrid back to Scotland. He's all good. Derek, on the other hand, well, I mean, I could tell you in great detail about what's going on with him. It's not great. The big man is struggling. He was trapped in Belgium. Now he's on his way to Milan. He's not going to get back for the cup final. It is a bit of a disaster. But thankfully, we've managed to get in a superb replacement and none other than Rangers fan royalty, Mr. Stevie Clifford. Thank you for joining me.
Johnny, good afternoon, and good afternoon to everyone.
Afternoon.
I have to apologise, Johnny, though, straight away. People that may be watching thinking they're going to see, one of the boys, particularly Joshua. I got a photo taken with him at the stadium the other day, Johnny. And honestly, it's never killed my dreams personally more, than getting a picture next to Joshua. Incredibly handsome, well groomed, and then you've got me next to him looking beetroot in the sun. So it was very difficult to take. So if you're tuning in wanting these boys, I'm sorry, it's just me.
Yeah, welcome to my life, mate. I have to sit across from these videos every day. It's painful. And what happens is when Joshua's not on, we tend to get a plethora of Twitter comments, normally from one sex in particular, asking where's Joshua today? Where was Joshua? I don't know what that's all about, mate. We just have to make a judgment call on that one. Before we get into today's show, we're just going to have a quick word about our sponsor, OneFootball. They have got a fantastic app. You have it as a one-stop shop on your phone, and you can use it to track any football club. Now, we know every one of you will be a Rangers fan and want to track what's going on at Ibrox if you're not at the games. But of course, there is much more than that. Many people will be Chelsea fans, will be Manchester United fans, AC Milan fans, Real Madrid fans. Any club in Europe is on this app, so you can pop them in, and it gives you not only updates from each game, scores, scorers, team lineups, in many cases, kind of live running blogs on what's happening in the game. But as you can see, there's also filtered news that comes in there for that team. So you get a good breadth of what's actually going on at that club. And you can set each club to a favourite so you get the information. It really is a cracking app. It's absolutely free. And if you can download that on the link in the description, that would be fantastic. It is really, really terrific. Right, Stevie, let's get chatting. First and foremost, I've not spoken to you since the game. Obviously, read your wonderful piece in reaction to the game. You were clearly gutted. That came across so clearly. How are you feeling now? Bit of distance from the actual events of the night and some time to process the enormity of what went down in Seville.
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I've read a lot of criticism of the players, a lot of criticism of some of the individuals, and I think it's fair to say that Rangers can play a lot better. I think that we all know that, and that is a slight regret in terms of, there's certain things, certain individuals can maybe play better, we can do things better, but I'm really reluctant to go in going hard and 2-foot this team in terms of where we are. We didn't learn anything the other night that we didn't already know. I thought that we were unlucky. It's such a fine margin in terms of where we were and what could have been. Penalties are a lottery. We had 4 really good penalties. If Aaron Ramsey's penalty is an inch higher to the right or whatever, then it goes in and we don't have this discussion. Penalties is what it is. Better players than Aaron Ramsey have missed. In terms of how we did overall, I think they've done us proud. They gave us absolutely everything. And although the quality might not have been there at times, we can do certain things better. We can be better in transition and things like that. Then I think that's just unfortunate in terms of sometimes that happens in games. I think sometimes you can be, have the perfect performance. But overall, obviously I'm heartbroken at how it turned out and how the result went. But I couldn't be prouder of everything this team's given us, the journey they've taken us on, the teams that they've beaten to get there. These tournaments aren't set up for teams like Rangers to get to finals, from countries like Scotland. So what we've achieved and what we've done, I think, has been remarkable. I think it's been great for Giovanni van Bronckhorst tactically in terms of where we are. So overall, we can be extremely proud of the tournament. We can be proud of the players, and I think even with the final the other night, we can feel the exact same way. I think that you can be critical at points if you really want to be, but I don't feel like I need to do that, Johnny, in terms of where we are. I just feel like they gave us absolutely everything. They ran themselves into the ground. And after, what was even more impressive for me is after Frankfurt scored, I felt like Rangers responded really well. I felt like we went again and we were unlucky. Maybe there's a few things we could have said, Johnny. Maybe Roof and Ramsey could have come on a wee bit earlier. Were they fit enough? We just don't know. But I feel like we gave it our ultimately our best shot. We left everything out there and we were so close. We were just short.
Absolutely, Stevie, and never more so than that moment where Kemar Roof manages to wriggle free down the right-hand side, crosses the ball, Ryan Kent comes in. Now, we love our statistics on the Rangers Review, and we've dug into that goal. It's got an XG, it's got an XG of 0.65, which means 65% of the time the player scores from that position. It's gilt-edged, guys. It's very rare to see a chance get such a high score on XG. To put it into context, a penalty is always 0.73, so it's nearly as good an opportunity as a penalty. Now, I would not blame Ryan Kent for 1 minute, Stevie. I'm just highlighting this as in terms of how fine the margins are. And then when you factor in the fact that many people in the stadium would not have realised just how close Stephen Davis's shot was. We are talking about that heading directly into the top corner. It was an Exocet missile, couldn't have connected with it any better. And the defender gets his quiff on the top of it. It's the merest of touches. He's straining every sinew of his body and his neck to get there. It's inches, isn't it, Stevie? It's not even inches, it's centimetres, it's millimetres.
Yeah, and this is what I mean by fine margins, Johnny. You know, Ryan Kent's chance, whether or not it would have stood, there's pictures that suggest it might have been out. But in terms of Ryan Kent, for me, there's no blame there either. It's one of those situations where, with the defender making that last-ditch challenge, you just have to try and get something on it. As you said, 65% of the time that goes in. The goalkeeper is only spreading himself in hope. He's not making like a dive and save on reaction. He's been instinctively trying to block it. And it's just unfortunate what happens. Stephen Davis's shot, we're talking inches again. Borna Barisic had a shot in which the defender missed making contact by inches again. And if he had done that, he tried to deflect the header. If he had maybe got an inch or two on that, it could have taken away from the goalkeeper. This is the fine margins that we're talking about in terms of, I don't feel that we could sit here and say we never really created anything. We didn't really do anything. I thought we did. I thought we were knocking at the door. I thought we were pressing. And remember, this is a Rangers team that didn't have a recognised striker. We've kind of got through the season without having a recognised right forward as well. So we've done it not against the odds in terms of, I think that would be downplaying the players' achievements because they are good enough. They have proved that. But in terms of setup and maybe having the correct tools at the disposal of what Gio maybe wants to do in terms of his team and how he sees them dynamically playing, I think he's not been given the strongest possible tools to do that, but yet he's managed to do what we have achieved and get into the final and things. So what I'm trying to say by that, Johnny, is I think in terms of where we've got and what we've had available, perhaps we've punched above in terms of selection options and things like that. And I think that's me trying to pay tribute to the guys that have filled in, the guys that have performed. Joe Aribo as a false nine and things like that. I think he's done incredibly well for a young lad just learning the position. So, if Morelos had been there, things like that, it could have been different. But it's a wonderful effort, a wonderful overall journey. Of course, I'm heartbroken, like every one of us will be when we look back on it. Every one of us thinking about, the what ifs, and as you said, those millimetre defensive blocks, and every one of us are replaying that moment, Kent sliding in and things like that. But that's football. That's the fine margins. We love it when it goes in our favour. It's the best feeling in the world. I said to Joshua just before penalty started, I said, Joshua, this is going to be the ultimate high or the ultimate low. And unfortunately, we were on the wrong side of it.
Yeah, absolutely. Stevie, listen, you were in the press box for the game for the Rangers Review. You did. You were alongside the boys there. But, you're a fan. And you were there in a capacity as a journalist. But as a fan throughout the day, how did you find the atmosphere, the carnival element of the crowd, and how positive it was? Because there was many people making all kinds of predictions about what would happen in Seville. And ultimately, what you had was one arrest from 160,000 people, 100,000 of them coming from Glasgow, and that arrest was an Eintracht Frankfurt fan. So 0 arrests. That is actually utterly remarkable, and speaks to how well behaved the Rangers fans were, and the kind of atmosphere that there was on the ground to celebrate the club. And in many ways, it was a fitting celebration for the 150th anniversary, for the 50th anniversary of the Barcelona Bears, and then this group of players and what they've achieved. It really was a festival, wasn't it?
Yeah, it was fantastic. I think the fans deserve a lot of praise in terms of their behaviour, their conduct, and both sets, Johnny, in terms of mingling together, was something that I've never really seen before. But it was a carnival of kind of colour. It was, just there was an atmosphere to it, Johnny, which you don't often get in terms of European away trips and in terms of such big games. But everybody was mingling together. Everyone was happy in non-segregated situations. Rangers fan zone was fantastic. It wasn't there for long, but being able to see that and see people having such a good time, the atmosphere was great. It was very relaxed in terms of how it was coordinated and things like that. There was just a good feel to everything. There wasn't anything that you could touch upon and say, let me try and say this. Sometimes you're in a situation, Johnny, in life where you feel like there's a kind of underlying kind of feeling that something might go wrong and there might be a wee bit of animosity in the air. Nothing like that. It was brilliant. Everybody was in such good high spirits. Everyone felt like Rangers had a good chance. We all thought, I didn't speak to anyone that thought that this was going to be a stick on. Anyone that thought that that we were definitely going to win. Everyone thought we had a chance. We had a 50-50 chance on the night. Two very close teams, and everybody was looking forward to it. And that just kind of radiated throughout. When I arrived in Seville, it was roasting, Johnny. And look at me, I'm not built for the sun. They're talking about a guy that grew up in Fort William and got sunburned there. So I'm not built for these kind of situations, but I loved it. Everybody was in jovial high spirits. A lot of people sitting outside cafes and bars having a wee drink, shouting, saying hello and stuff like that. When we got closer to the stadium, the atmosphere was fine as well. We got in maybe a wee bit earlier. Myself and Joshua would go in, and we went in the media side of it. So we didn't see what people were seeing in terms of the policing barriers and things like that. By the time we were in and in our kind of security line and stuff like that, that was happening. So we were seeing that. But even then, Johnny, I understand that happens at football grounds. People talking about being searched 2 or 3 times. That happens when Rangers go to Pittodrie. So I understand in terms of policing is always going to be a wee bit, as football fans, we feel it's a wee bit heavy-handed. I understand that. But in terms of, I would have expected that in terms of what we would see towards the ground. What happened next? I mean, Joshua and I, when we went in, it was weird because we went in earlier and I was kind of thinking, right, these kiosks must be shut because we're not maybe an hour and a half before, like at Ibrox. It doesn't open till an hour and a half before. Maybe that's when things. But Johnny, it was so strange. It was almost like the stadium, 45, 46,000, whatever it holds, was set up expecting 15,000 people. It was the most bizarre setup. They weren't ready. They weren't able to cope with 46,000 people. It was almost like it was a surprise that people were thirsty. It was an incredible setup. It was extremely dangerous. It was extremely disappointing. And that was a real shock to me. A real surprise in terms of the setup and everything else. Up until that point, I'd had a fantastic time and nothing was an issue. When that began to happen, it was just shock, Johnny. That's the easiest way to describe it. how underprepared they were. And, you get potentially 15, 20, 25,000 British folk travelling to a game like that abroad, and they don't have water available. I think that's astounding.
Yeah, no, it absolutely is. I mean, it doesn't. Obviously, there's going to be bigger demand than the average Sevilla game, because these guys who live in the city are going to be used to the temperatures, are going to be less affected by it. It's not a one-off showpiece event when people have been taking alcohol all day. Of course, people are going to need to hydrate more. And the fact that they've come out and said, oh, people drank 3 times as much as normal, or the demand was 3 times as much as normal. I mean, that should have been absolutely anticipated. And even then, this was highlighted by the club to UEFA before the game. So they had time to go out and purchase and bring in water for the fans and disseminate that around the stadium.
I think, sorry, Johnny, just to say on that, I think one thing that confuses me regarding what UEFA maybe said about that, and for people that was there and people that were in the stadium, I seen David Egger comment on it as well. Kiosks were actually shut. They weren't even open. People were having to use tapped water and things, which is, we're all told not to do that. But it was urgent. But it was, they've said the demand's 3 times higher. I'm not sure that's even correct in terms of it being like that, because the demand, I don't think they were even prepared for the demand. Like, as I said, other people that were there might be able to say the same thing as me, but kiosks were actually shut. It wasn't like this was a stadium open. I'll try and describe this, and not meaning to sound bad, but if you were at the Rangers B game or you were at the Rangers women's game at Ibrox this year, and you would see that there was minimal kind of, because we have a lower fan base going to that instead of being a full Ibrox stadium, people will understand only certain kiosks at Ibrox then were open. That is what it was like, Johnny, on Wednesday night inside that stadium. Kiosks were closed. It was almost like they didn't expect anyone to be there for that. They expected 15,000 capacity, and that surprised me. It just, I turned to Joshua and said, it seems like we're almost like we're shut here. Albeit we were in earlier, I just thought that, and then the story started to come through. It's just so badly organised.
Yeah.
Really,
and the stories are dramatic. We've got a piece on the Rangers Review today. Derek Clark spent all day yesterday talking to fans, collecting testimony about what happened, and we collated those, the ones that we could verify, and we've got a piece that we'd urge you to go and read. It's not behind the paywall for the reason that we want people to be able to read it, to understand what was going on. Normally our content is behind our paywall for our subscribers, and we've taken this one off just because we feel like it's important testimony that needs to get out there, because this is shocking, some of the things that happened. Rangers fans were essentially kettled, obviously different people for different times depending on when they arrived outside the stadium. But for many, they were an hour in the baking sun without access to water. If you were lucky enough and clever enough to think ahead and bring water with you, once you made it through the kettling to the section where they search you, that water was then removed from you. It was taken off you. The bottles were thrown in the bin. A number of issues with items that had been previously agreed with UEFA that would be allowed into the stadium. Things like power banks were taken off people. Now, the problem with power banks, of course, is we live in a paperless society, Stevie. People don't have tickets. So their way of getting in, to prove that they're getting in, is on their phone. More than that, Stevie, it's also the way that they prove they've got airport tickets later on that night, or transfer tickets, is on their phone. If they don't have their power bank, if they just happen to be unlucky enough to not have connected their phone on the way, and they've only got 30% battery, or God forbid 10% battery, you're in serious bother. And this was things that people obviously weren't thinking about when they were rushing to judgment. Now, a fan said to Derek, I was told that these would be missiles. These could be used as missiles, power banks. On top of that, they were telling people with iPods, earpods they had to go. I mean, these can cost £150 a pop. No, straight in the bag. They have to be thrown out. It's quite remarkable. And then you start to hear testimony of people told medicines. We had someone who said that they were a stroke survivor, said they had statins that to regulate cholesterol. That was taken away from them. somebody, and we've got a comment on this from Curry Muncher. We couldn't properly verify this because there was only one account, but somebody that was told to remove their colostomy bag. I mean, if that's true, that is absolutely dreadful. Now, we know on social media you have to be very, very careful because people can, try and catch you out. We see it all the time. But if that's the case, that is absolutely disgusting, isn't it, Stevie?
Jonny, it's shocking. We saw an incident, Joshua and I. So where we were on the stadium layout, if people can imagine, we were right up the back of the main stand in terms of looking down on where the players came out and the tunnels and where the dugouts were. A gentleman collapsed in the Rangers support behind the actual Rangers dugout. This was maybe, Jonny, about 5 minutes after the players came for their warm-up. The club doctor ended up jumping over onto the dugout roof into the crowd to help this man, who then, a couple of minutes later, people appeared and literally manhandled him out. It was scary. Obviously, we think maybe we haven't heard how that gentleman is. It'd be great if we knew it was, he was fine and whatever. But I assume maybe, Jonny, that it was heat, and maybe heat stroke or whatever, and he's collapsed from that. It's because people couldn't get water, they couldn't get hydrated. It's all a subsequence of the things we've discussed. But to hear people, I've heard the stories about the iPod, the earpod things, and the batteries and the makeup. People get makeup taken off them and things like that. I mean, it's almost like, Jonny, that Rangers have went with the Rangers support have went with a preconceived idea from the Spanish police of what we were going to be like. So they just heavy-handedly treated us that way. When as the reaction now and the police, obviously, stats and whatever else you want to say is proven to be wrong. It's almost like we've been judged in advance. How we can be treated that way, and then you look over 100 yards over the other side of the stadium and they've got pyrotechnics and all sorts of stuff being allowed in is quite baffling to me. But most important thing is everybody that was in the Rangers end is okay and everybody's well, and I would hope that anyone that did have difficult moments and did suffer from these kind of things have all got home safely and are all okay. And anyone that has had their stuff taken off them that has previously been vetted and told it's fine to go in, I would be looking at, I know things like the earbuds, Jonny, you can track these things and you can find out where they are. I heard somebody said that their, stuff like their iPad and things was taken off them.
Yeah.
I would be trying to, if it was me, I would be certainly chasing these things and finding out what's going on, because, a lot of that to me, it just sounds really, really off in my opinion.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, just to end this, I had an account from a young female who got in touch with me via direct message on Twitter, just to say that basically the article was spot on in every way with regards to what she'd been through. But the thing that really stuck out to me, Stevie, was just how dangerous her account was. And here's what she said. She said the last drink of water she got was at 6:30, and she didn't drink water again till 3:30 a.m. because by the time she got out of the stadium, there was nothing open. Anything that was open, which was the odd McDonald's, a vendor on the street, and there was reports of vendors charging €20 a bottle of water, by the way, on the street. These were few and far between, but where they were, they were obviously very, very quickly swamped. So it was almost impossible to actually get any hydration. She went from 6:30 till 3:30 a.m. in 35-degree heat without water. It's actually a miracle that there wasn't more serious injury or damage or ill health in the Rangers end last night. And I know there's been a lot of reports that there's been issues with the Frankfurt end as well. I've obviously not been looking into that with the same level of detail, Stevie, but it is genuinely shocking. I'm led to believe that the club will be making some kind of representation on this. I know the club are furious at what's happened. They will be reacting. So we'll have that for you on certainly the Rangers Review Twitter feed and the website, and keep an eye out for that later on. But listen, before we go, Stevie, because we are running out of time, I've kept you quite a long time. We've got so many comments coming in. I just wanted to touch on Jimmy Bell, because obviously today was his funeral. We've had a lot of comments of people coming in, just saying R.I.P. Jimmy and remembering Jimmy. He was such an important part of the Rangers family, such an important part of the club. You don't really realise it until you speak to former players, how intrinsic he was, how important he was to the very fabric of the club. And I know you've met Jimmy and you knew him, so maybe you could have a few words, mate.
Jimmy Bell was Mr. Rangers. I've not known Rangers Football Club without Jimmy Bell being there in my lifetime. He was a man that lived and breathed our club. He lived his own very dream. And Jimmy, Jimmy was a character. I can't claim to know Jimmy like ex-players have, and I was fortunate enough to meet Jimmy a few times, and I'll tell you a funny story just in a wee second. But those that read the Rangers review piece that I put out just a couple of days ago, when we're on the run up to this, would know that I recently lost my father-in-law. We were invited up to the training ground 5 or 6 years ago. Mark Warburton was still in charge, just as the club said, because my father-in-law Duncan had been going to Rangers games 60 years, 50 years a season ticket holder. He really wanted to go up to the training ground, so the club invited him up. And as we were shown around by Paul Murray, actually took us around, and as we were shown around, we were invited in, and Jimmy showed me his room and got talking to Jimmy. And I know a couple of ex-players that Jimmy had obviously been at Rangers and stuff, and we had a wee chat. And Jimmy, Jimmy wasn't like what people might see, like this exterior. Jimmy was a loving, really funny man. As soon as you began to speak to him, loved his dog, loved his family. As soon as that chat started, he was away, and he would say to you, come and look at this, and look what I've got up here, the 9-row flags, and say, look at this strip, this is a match ball given to me, lots of champagne bottles. He had everything. It was like a treasure trove, Johnny, of Rangers archives and history everywhere. And he was more than happy to take time to show you and have a wee chat. And, I was very interested. So, Jimmy, what do you do on a day-to-day basis and stuff like that? And he was just the nicest of men, and into his wee room and, his kind of working domain. There was no barriers up. There was no, there was no attitude of anything. As soon as he knew why we were there and we were having a wee peek, he was just the nicest man. And it brings me to a wee story I have. Myself and Craig Johnston, people might know him as CJ Novo, were over in Leipzig for the semi-final game. And as we came back, we were waiting for our transfer back to get the car in Glasgow Airport. And there was Jimmy and Davy Lavery, Big Disco, as he's better known at Ibrox, standing with Jimmy. So CJ's like, I need to go over and see Jimmy. I need to go and get a picture. So I was laughing. I says, Jimmy will tell you off. He said, Jimmy doesn't like the pictures and the accolades and the attention. Jimmy's very, very private and things like that. So CJ goes over and you could see him saying hello, and Jimmy, gives him the one eye up and down, as if to say, who is this approaching me? And as soon as he knew, that CJ was friendly and things, big smiles and laughing, and looked over to me, and I've given them, a wee wave and a wee wave back and stuff. And it was a lovely moment. And that was Jimmy. He had time for everyone. He was the friendliest and nicest guy. And I know that you'll hear the stories about, Josh Windass tells a great story about Jimmy in terms of, Laudrup didn't wear gloves, son, and things like that. That was Jimmy. He had a very dry wit. He was, very into all the players and stuff, but it was never beyond that. He was Mr. Rangers. He just wanted Rangers to win, and he would do everything for that. And he will go down rightly as a club legend in terms of the service and commitment he gave to our football club.
Yeah, hopefully he gets in the Hall of Fame. I think that would be a fitting tribute to him. I don't know if that's possible.
Yeah.
But I think that would be a lovely way to kind of cap the whole thing off, because he did give so much to the club. There's no doubt about that. And, rest in peace, Jimmy Bell. That's all that's left to say really on it. But that was a great testimony, Stevie. Thanks for that. Just before we go, very, very briefly, Cup final on Saturday. I can't believe that we've got all this into into the video, and we've basically not even touched on the cup final. It's almost like an afterthought. It's absolutely incredible, given Rangers' record in the Scottish Cup is almost as bad as it was in the 90s. I don't even know, Stevie. I mean, how do we even approach this cup final and say it's a must-win? It must be won.
Yeah, I mean, listen, every Rangers game is a must-win. We know that, but the Giovanni Van Bronckhorst's remit is to make Rangers successful. And we all sit here now and we're heartbroken about what happened the other night. We're all really disappointed about what happened in the league campaign. And, the Scottish Cup might not, I said this in the Rangers review piece the other day, Johnny, it might not be what we started out the season for, or it might not be what we should aim for. But in terms of the importance to the football club, Rangers have to start winning stuff. We have to start getting shiny things back at Ibrox. And if that starts with the Scottish Cup, before we can start building next season to add more to it, then this needs to become a normality for this football club once again, in terms of winning things, in terms of competing, in terms of getting to finals and starting to try and get back to what we would consider as a fan base normality. Now, I don't mean that, Johnny, to be arrogant and say that we should be winning everything every year. That doesn't happen, but inevitably we'll have years where we'll do well. We'll have years maybe not, but it should never be a case of we're going 10, 15 years without competing in major Scottish finals. This has to now become a normality. I think it's been, 2009 since we last won the Scottish Cup Natural Nobles finish against Falkirk. We're back again tomorrow. Really looking forward to it. For the team, it's going to be difficult because they've obviously come back from Wednesday night, extra time, that searing heat, etc. And then they're going to, such a massive game tomorrow. But I back the team again, Johnny. One last time. It might be a last game for quite a few of them. I wouldn't be surprised to see a few changes. I would be tempted, to freshen it up slightly. Not massively, Johnny, in terms of changes-wise. Maybe a change at centre-half, move Bassi to left-back. I think Barisic maybe might not make it. Maybe a change. Stephen Davis might start in midfield, for example. Is there room for Alex Lowry to start? I would love to see that happen. I know it's a big thing for a youngster at that age to start such a major cup final, but I think he's got that little bit, Johnny, that, in terms of a team maybe needing a slight lift, a slight enthusiasm, somebody that's going to try something different, somebody that's capable of playing that incisive through ball, a little moment of magic. I know he's a young lad, so I don't want to put too much pressure on him, but I think Alex Lowry has got the potential to be one of the best players that's come through our youth academy. I would be tempted, and it's just me. Maybe something I'll ask you later on in the press conference, Johnny. But in terms of Alex Lowry starting tomorrow, I'd love to see that happen. I wouldn't go in and make wholesale changes. I'm not talking about 6, 7 changes. I would go with the majority that started the other night. But I would look to maybe make 2 or 3, Johnny, enough to put some legs in and freshen it up. It's a massive game. Hearts are a good side. They've got some good players. Ellis Sims, Kingsley's capable of a cracking free kick. Barry Mackay, I think, is a fantastic player, capable of doing some wonderful things with the football. So they're going to be up for it. They're going to fancy their chances. Johnny, it might be a cracking game. I've got a feeling, it might be good weather and it might be a real cracker. But again, I'd fancy Rangers to come out on top and start returning trophies back to Ibrox, starting with the Scottish Cup tomorrow. Not won enough of these in my lifetime, Johnny. My first ever Rangers game was Airdrie back in 1992, the Scottish Cup final, where Hateley and Macaulay scored. So
that wasn't a good game, though. I remember that well. I was just a kid as well. I remember watching it. It was a real battle of attrition, that one. I remember Airdrie scoring with 10 minutes to go or something like that. Squeaky bum time. But listen, you're absolutely right. The Scottish Cup record hasn't been good enough over the last 30-odd years, but let's hope that changes starting tomorrow, mate. We're going to wrap up here. Thanks very much for joining us. I think what you lacked in terms of visuals, you more than made up for in actual content, Stevie. So we're very happy you came on. So thank you for joining me. Guys, obviously, if you want to support what we do, get onto the Rangers Review and subscribe. It's £6. You pay that one payment up front, and that is you for the next 6 months. You can't say fairer than that. It's an absolute bargain. Gives you access to all our content and, of course, helps support us to do things like this. Until next time, and we will be back very much tomorrow with loads of content.